Welcome to the Friday afternoon, first and third Friday, 2:30 interactive webinar with a prodependence focus. I'm Debbie McRae. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Mesa, Arizona, where I have my own private practice. And I specialize in working not only with sex addicts, but the big part of my practice is working with betrayed partners. And as Tammy mentioned, I bring into this webinar each time things that come up in my office or in group. And this past couple of weeks, I've been dealing with a lot of drama. So today we're going to talk about getting out of the recovery drama. At some point, everybody's going to experience, if they are part of that betrayed or the addict partnership, there's going to be drama. So in the early days, what comes up for couples is they're trying to repair the disconnection and the disruption that's occurring in their relationship due to the discovery or the disclosure of the addict partner's sexual acting out. So as a result, what once was a safe attachment for the betrayed partner is no longer safe or secure. And so if we look at this through the prodependence lens, what takes place is, because this addiction is an intimacy disorder, all of a sudden now we have a connection that's disrupted. So the addiction and the acting out by the addict partner negatively impacts the relationship, as does the trauma that the partner experiences. And so the betrayed partner no longer feels like it's safe to move towards their partner. They may even go into their safety-seeking behaviors because they need to know, is my partner safe and secure? Can I move towards them? Or can I find something that lets me know that they're no longer safe and secure? So I need to stay away. I need to disconnect. I find that when this happens, oftentimes we have the betrayed partner going into safety seeking, the addict partner then gets triggered. So their shame may get triggered. They may dig into their denial as they see their betrayed partner going into the safety seeking. And so what then occurs is the couple go into this cycle. It's a cycle of distress, and there is a lot of drama. So I love to teach about Karpman's drama triangle and apply it to what takes place in recovery for the betrayed partner and the addict partner. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So let me give you a little bit of background. Karpman started looking at the interactions between people in relationships, and he started to notice that people would interact certain ways when the relationship was under stress. So they would actually get into these negative patterns, and these patterns became quite disruptive. And he found that there were certain elements of this cycle that was negative. And the first one was that people began to create stories, personal stories, to make sense of the interpersonal relationship that was in distress. So I call this in my practice the stories I tell myself. Then as a result, they take these stories, and the stories become kind of my script, my running script, what I tell myself about the other person all the time whenever I'm interacting. And as a result, whenever a crisis comes along, I'm into my stories and it pulls me into a specific role. There are three main roles that Karpman defined. The first one is the victim, which we're going to generally call it the poor me, why is this happening to me role. The other one is the rescuer. They're the one that's going to fix it. They're going to take care of the problem. And the third role is the persecutor. They're going to be the one that lets you know what's wrong and what you're doing wrong. And they oftentimes come off as the bully. The problem is the partners get into these roles not realizing they're in these roles, and it creates further disconnection and further disruption to the relationship. So today we're going to talk about how these roles manifest in both the betrayed partner and the addict partner. I'm going to give you some ideas that you can kind of go through to see where you fall. Typically, we move between two main roles. When I'm in relationship dynamics with somebody I'm close to, people at work, I have a tendency to go back and forth between these two roles. However, the person I'm in relationship with may see me exhibiting different roles in their mind. So it gets very, very convoluted and it gets complex. So let's talk about the victim. In betrayal trauma, the betrayed partner initially assumes the role of the victim. It's obvious. There's been disclosure and discovery. They're hurt, there's been betrayal, and they are powerless due to their partner's addiction and their acting out behaviors. So as a result, right, they're feeling this trauma due to the addict partner's lies, their deceit, their broken promises. And they feel like they're a victim of the circumstances. They have no control over it and they can't fix it. They don't know what to do. And as a result, they also experience a wide range of very intense emotions like the sadness, the anger, and the confusion, which leads them to a place where they feel very powerless. So when I first see betrayed partners, this is often when they come in to see me, when they're at that point. Now, when I'm in this role of a victim as a betrayed partner, I'm wanting to seek some sympathy and get support from others because I want them to reinforce, yes, you're a victim. However, it continues to reinforce the powerlessness. So at some point, a betrayed partner's got to recognize, I'm in the role of being a victim right now. And as long as I stay in this role, that means I'm powerless. I can't do anything about it. The addict partner takes on the role of being a victim when they feel like they're unfairly judged, they're being misunderstood, they're told that they created all the problems, that they're responsible for the betrayal trauma. And that leads them into feeling like they're powerless to do anything about it. They don't even know what to do. So oftentimes I've seen the addict partners, how it shows up in real life is they'll go to their groups or to their therapist and they'll complain about their betrayed partner's safety-seeking behaviors, not recognizing that those safety-seeking behaviors are because they just need to know that the connection and they are safe and secure. And as a result, they complain and they get other people jumping in with them and going, that's not right. And in reality, they are setting themselves up in taking on that role of being a victim. So how do you know if you take on the role of being a victim? So I'm going to give you some ideas of what you might say to yourself or think to yourself, or this could be attitudes that you have. So one of them would be for the betrayed partner, I feel hopeless when I'm around my addict partner. Or I feel hopeless about the situation. I feel hopeless about the future of our relationship. I feel uncomfortable asking my addict partner or my betrayed partner for what I need or want. So, gosh, I have to do it myself. I guess I'm just, because I'm powerless and I have no control. And then I eventually just become kind of paralyzed and I don't do anything. Okay. I'm afraid to disagree with my addict partner because I'm afraid that if I do that, then it's going to get worse. So I just can't do anything. I never feel I can do anything right. That would be the addict partner. No matter what I do, it's just never right. For a betrayed partner, it would be, I need the addict partner to fix this problem. He or she caused it, so he or she needs to fix it, and they need to help me heal. My addict partner does this to intentionally hurt me. I've heard that said. I just know he didn't take the trash out because he intentionally wanted to give me a message and let me know that I can't control him. So that's a possibility. The addict partner continues to betray me no matter what they do. They go and they do self-care, and oftentimes the betrayed partner might see that as, they're leaving me, they're going and doing something for themselves. It's very selfish. And so as a result, the betrayed partner feels like a victim. Sometimes I'll hear them say, I have to constantly apologize to my addict partner or my betrayed partner, even when I'm not doing anything wrong. I constantly apologize. I want to make sure everything stays okay. An addict partner might feel like the betrayed partner is taking advantage of them, especially if there's a lot of anger, if there's a lot of demands. And most of those demands are because the betrayed partner just needs safety. And if the betrayed partner also has an attitude of constantly worrying and feeling like the addict partner is going to leave them, reject them, abandon them. So when I'm in this place, when I take on this role, we have to remember that I'm in a place of powerlessness unless I choose as a partner to step out of being that victim. If I don't choose to do that for myself, then I'm just going to stay there. Okay. The next role we talked about was the rescuer. So the rescuer, this happens in any situation where the betrayed partner steps in and tries to take on a caretaker role. They want to help rescue that addict partner. So they might do things like resuming responsibility. They will make the appointments to the therapist for the addict partner. They might remind them that they've got to make an appointment. They might ask them how they're doing their recovery work, when they're doing it, how much time they're spending on it. And their attempts in doing this has a really positive motivation behind it. However, if we look underneath all of that, we talked about the fear cycle before, there's typically a lot of fear. And so that fear is what kind of motivates the person to become that caretaker. So they're trying constantly to fix things. I've got to rescue my addict partner. He or she is never going to get better unless I'm in it with them. And they feel like somehow their actions are going to somehow assist the addict partner in getting better and do their recovery in a better way, a quicker way, a more efficient way. Okay. The addict partner may have so much shame that they feel like they're responsible for the betrayed partner's recovery. So it can shift even to where the addict partner feels like they've got to somehow step in and caretake for the betrayed partner. So they might do things like allowing the betrayed partner to do some unhealthy safety seeking. They might have an attitude of, I deserve it, I did this, I'm just going to sit and listen to her. They might move into a victim role and say, I can't set boundaries because of what I did, I'm a bad person. And then they're trying to constantly figure out, how can I make this better? Unfortunately, caretakers, rescuers are not good at setting boundaries. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So how do you know if you're taking on the caretaker or the rescuer role? So you've got to ask yourself, am I focusing more on the self-care or the care of my partner rather than focusing on my own self-care? So do I neglect my self-care because I'm busy taking care of other people? Am I going out of my way to make sure my addict partner or my betrayed partner is happy? Am I going into people pleasing and trying to make sure that my addict partner or my betrayed partner is really pleased with me? And am I focusing more on pleasing them than I am on pleasing myself? Am I overcommitting to helping my partner's recovery? Am I focusing on theirs more than I'm focusing on mine? Do I drop my own recovery work to stop and help other people? Do I feel guilty if I don't take the time to stop and help my partner? Do I put my partner's needs before my own? Do I like to rescue and fix my partner because it makes me feel important? It makes me feel like there's more connection, that I'm valuable. And as long as I'm valuable, then my partner's going to stay with me. And do I focus more on solving my addict partner or my betrayed partner's problems than I do my own? So it's very interesting. Am I outward focused? Because as a caretaker rescuer, I'm constantly looking towards the other person to make sure that I am somehow rescuing them or taking care of them so they will be okay. Now let's talk about the persecutor. As you can imagine, the addict partner takes on the role of the persecutor. They're the one that created this problem. They're the one with the addiction. And so oftentimes the addict partner, because of their shame, will become very defensive. In their shame, they will blame the addict partner for their addiction, for the situations that come up, for the argument that happened, for being over demanding. And as the addict partner engages in these behaviors, right, they also behave in other behaviors. When they're accusing, they'll do things like gaslighting, which might be avoiding taking responsibility. I might shift the blame back to you. I might deny it. I might shut you down. I might walk away. And therefore, as a betrayed partner, I see you as being very persecutorial. We can also have the addict partner, the betrayed partners, because there's so much disruption and disconnection to the relationship, they may go into some verbal and emotional abuse. So I might scream and yell, I might call you names, I might use shame language because I'm in so much pain. And therefore, the other person is going to see you as a persecutor. Oftentimes, when we take on this role, it causes then the environment to become very hostile. It causes the relationship to become very unsafe. So it then further reinforces the addict partner and the betrayed partner feeling like they're a victim. So you can see how these roles really intermix with each other. So, how do you know if you're taking on the role of a persecutor? So, do I feel like I need to have the upper hand in everything, like the conversations, in the final decision, even in how we spend money, how much time we spend together? Do I see my addict partner or my betrayed partner as incompetent in doing their recovery work? So, it's up to me to make them aware of the fact that they need to do it quicker, they should be farther along. They're not doing the right kind of behaviors around their recovery work. Am I turning and blaming my partner for the things that I should be accountable for and take responsibility for? Um, do I have to get my way whenever there's a disagreement? Does it have to be my way or the highway? And do I not feel good unless my partner is doing exactly and saying exactly how I need them to do it or say it? And I'm going to let them know how they're doing it incorrectly. So when I'm a persecutor, it's basically about me kind of bullying through my behaviors the other person. So I'm always one up in the dynamic of the relationship. So the roles in the drama triangle are not fixed, which means that I'm going to mainly move back and forth when I'm in relationship with somebody else between two roles. So for me, it might be I'm a victim. Most of us are victims at some point. We feel sorry for ourselves. We feel bad. And sometimes we truly are victims. But again, like I said earlier, we have a choice. Are we going to stay being a victim or am I going to step out of that role? And then I like to move into a caretaker rescuer role. That feels good to me. For years, I thought that's how I created connection with other people. I was valuable. They would need me. So I would put in more work and more time and more effort into helping the victims that I came across than they really wanted to. So as a result, as a rescuer, I started feeling resentment and frustration with those victims that wouldn't take my wonderful suggestions because I have such great ideas and I can see how it can be done so much more efficiently and I can pull that victim out of their struggle. However, as I am trying to rescue the victim and I'm trying to help them and give them all these ideas, and then I'm getting frustrated and resentful, that person who's the victim is going to then see me as a persecutor. I'm now the bad guy. So oftentimes with people, I will say, instead of getting into a drama triangle, you know what? I'm Switzerland on this. I'm just going to listen to what you have to say. And then I'm going to ask you, what have you thought about doing? Now, when clients come in to see me, I have to make them aware of how the drama triangle shows up for them and what are the roles that they alternate back and forth between, because there's typically two that we move between. Remember that anytime you're in a drama triangle, you're in a dance of disconnection, and it adversely affects the relationship. It's detrimental to the relationship and it creates an insecure attachment. So you're going to feel fearful in the relationship. You're going to be preoccupied. Is my partner really there for me? Can I trust that they're there for me? You might even be dismissing. I'm just going to kind of ignore you or not even listen to what you say because I know you're not going to listen to me, or I know it just doesn't even matter. And so there's no sense and there's no use. So we have to be proactive in getting out of this drama triangle. So there's three things that you need to work on and focus on. The first one we're going to talk about is taking responsibility for your own actions and also for allowing other people to be responsible. The second one is we've got to explore the healthiest options. So what are my choices? What are the options that I have here? And then we've got to learn how to negotiate through effective communication. And so let's talk about how that kind of plays out and what that looks like in a relationship. So here's some things to consider. The first one is to recognize your own role. So we have to constantly be aware of, when am I going into the drama triangle with my partner? Your number one way of knowing is that you will typically start to feel dysregulated, meaning I'm starting to go limbic. I'm feeling fearful. I'm feeling angry, anxious. I am feeling frustrated. You might feel it physiologically in your body. I talk about that all the time. And then notice that you're going to be in the stories in your head. All of a sudden, I'm in my stories, and my stories pretty much run, about the same. There's a pattern to them. Regarding each person, I have my own set stories. So I had to acknowledge when I'm going into the drama triangle, I have to recognize my stories, and I have to recognize what role, what position I'm on. And then I've got to be real with myself on how it contributes to that dance of disconnection. And that does take work. Oftentimes, you have to go in and work with somebody who understands the drama triangle, like a trained therapist, especially in relationship to the recovery from betrayal trauma and from sex and porn addiction. Of course, I like those therapists that also do it through the codependence lens, because it makes so much sense to me to focus on the attachment piece of it. And so a lot of self-reflection is really crucial here. You have to get real with yourself. You have to be open to feedback at times from your therapist and eventually from your partner. And we have to start to acknowledge that I can't fix what I won't acknowledge. And so I have to be willing to focus on myself, which means I have to step in and be responsible for myself as well. So with that, it means I can't control my addict or my betrayed partner's behaviors or choices. Instead, I've got to focus on taking responsibility for me, my recovery, my choices, my actions. And sometimes I have to get to a place where I'm going to choose to step out of the drama triangle and not help at this point. They've got to figure this out on their own. And when I see betrayed partners get to that point, I do see that, and I've mentioned this many times before, I see this as a very positive place to get to in your recovery, because that means I'm choosing to step out of trying to fix the situation. And when I choose to step out of trying to fix it, oftentimes I'm also choosing out of being in the drama triangle on the position of a victim. So I really like it when we get to that point in recovery. You have to be very proactive in getting the support you need. So when I take responsibility for myself, that means if I don't know how to fix it and we're constantly in the drama triangle, then I need to go get help. So I need to find somebody, whether it's a group therapy setting, it's a therapist that understands this, where I can go and get understanding, develop coping strategies, rebuilding my trust, how I do that, trust in myself, my intuition. Those are the things you've got to start working on. Also, I have to recognize, what am I responsible for? And what is my partner responsible for? So you've got to have a lot of clarity on, in my recovery, here's what I need to focus on. Here's my responsibility. And if it's not your responsibility, you have to have those really good internal boundaries that tell you, nope, I'm not going to step in and do it. So you have to remind yourself that you should not be doing for the addict or the betrayed partner what they should be doing for themselves. There's always that option. I can choose to step out of doing it for them. So exploring your options is a third thing that you have to do. So both partners have to educate themselves as to what their options are. So how can I get out of the drama triangle? How does my behaviors when I'm in the drama triangle, whether I'm a victim, a persecutor, or a caretaker, rescuer, how is it affecting the relationship? And what are some of the available tools that I have to get out of it? Again, like I've said before, sometimes we have to get help from other people who experience being in the drama triangle and what works for them. But you've got to look at the options that you have. And one of the biggest options you have is to learn how to do boundaries, because boundaries are the way we get out of the drama triangle. We've got to figure out what we can put into place that's a healthier way of handling this. And so the next thing you have to do, the fourth thing, is to set clear boundaries. So you've got to learn how to figure out what are healthy boundaries. Now, I find that when you're in the midst of recovery from betrayal trauma, from sex and porn addiction, you don't understand boundaries very well. It's very confusing. The addicts are in the situation they're in because of boundary issues. the betrayed partner's boundaries have been so violated that, they're having a hard time understanding boundaries and knowing what they can and can't do. So you've got to get some help and understanding on that, whether you self-educate, again, because I'm a therapist and I know how valuable it is to learn from people who have the skills and tools and then go out and use them. It kind of shortens the amount of the learning curve time. So sometimes that's a good way to go. I tell my clients, if you can't figure out how to get out of the drama triangle, then you just do one thing, and that is you call a timeout. So that should be one boundary everybody puts in place regardless of any other thing you know how to do. And that is when you feel yourself becoming limbic, meaning my brain is now going offline. I'm no longer connected to my prefrontal cortex where there's logic, reasoning, emotional regulation. And I'm starting to really get emotional. That's when I call a timeout and ask to take a pause. Because once my brain's offline, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes if I'm really good at getting reconnected to my prefrontal cortex to finally get grounded again and back into my logic and reasoning and emotional regulation. I might take a little longer. So it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of strength at times to call the timeout because I know we're fighting for connection. So the limbic brain tells us, you got to stay in this, you got to fight this and see this through. But the only way out of a drama triangle at times is just to call a timeout. And remember the timeout rules. The person who calls the timeout is responsible for coming back around to readdress the issue. So are they going to do that within 12 hours, within 24 hours? Every couple is different. You need to determine what those rules are. We're going to talk about the rules in a minute. Okay. So another thing to do with boundaries is when the addict partner and betrayed partners are really in that connected, grounded part of their brain, they're connected to prefrontal, they need to sit down and they need to make out a list of what are acceptable behaviors. So when I'm in the drama triangle, I can recognize if I'm stepping into those behaviors that are not on the acceptable list. You might even put it on some unacceptable behaviors. We do that as well. So what you're going to do is it might be your rules of engagement, or we also call it fair fighting rules. So it's how we're going to talk to each other, where we're going to talk, how we're going to call a timeout. Maybe it's the words that we use. So instead of saying, hey, timeout, I'm done, and walk away, I might feel abandoned if my partner does that to me. We might determine as we sit down and go through how we're going to handle this, we might determine that we're going to call it a pause. I have some of my clients come up with just some kind of a crazy word to call it. So they know that if the person says that word, it means, hey, I need to take a pause, take a break. I need to get grounded and come back. I care about you. I want to work on this with you. But right now, I'm just going limbic. So I don't want to hurt you because I'm in that limbic part of my brain. It's also really important that you put on that list the behaviors you will not engage in, those destructive, unhealthy behaviors, whether it's shame language, foul language, it's screaming and yelling loudly, throwing things. That can happen when we're in the drama triangle. Now, the interesting thing is when we're in the drama triangle and we're limbic, because we're in that limbic part of our brain, we process differently. And so we don't often remember the things that we say, and sometimes even the full extent of what we've done. And so our partners may come back and say, you said this and this and this, and you won't have recollection of it. That can actually happen. So we have to be very, very clear on, we've got to take the time out before we get to that point. And we've got to also be very clear on what is allowed and what is not allowed as far as behaviors when you find yourself in the drama triangle, and then how to get out of it. So remember, keep in mind that boundaries are not about control. They're not about punishment. They're about safety. So I want to make sure that we stay safe for each other so we can create connection. Number 5 is you've got to engage in open and honest communication. So one of the things that I find works very well for couples and when they're in the drama triangle is to recognize when you're in it, number 1, and number 2, then you're going to tell your partner, oh my gosh, I just realized I'm in my story, and the story I'm telling myself is this. Is that true? So we've got to check in on our stories. I've got to be open and honest. Here's what I'm thinking about this. Here's what I'm telling myself about you. Here's what I'm telling myself about this situation. Is this true? I find that such a great way to kind of calm everything down, because the other partner might go, no, I don't think that at all. Not at all. I'm wondering why you feel that way. And it will do more to create connection than anything I have found. If we can learn to finally go, you know what, I've got to tell you the story I'm in right now about you, or about me, or about us. You've got to learn to express your feelings and your concerns and your needs in a very calm and assertive manner. So, two of the tools that I use with my clients, one, is I've talked about numerous times, is the 4-part talking boundary. And I like, if you're, let's say, in the drama triangle, you've taken a time out, I've got to figure out how to handle the situation. Then go get a journal and or notebook and write out these 4 things. First thing you're doing is you're going to write down all the data. Here's what I saw, here's what I heard. It's got to be very factual. Don't put any interpretation to it. Then you're going to identify the stories you told yourself. And then number 3, when I saw and heard you do this, and I told myself this story, number 3 is, here's the feelings and emotions that it created in me. And then the last part is expressing your need, making that vulnerable request. It is so effective, especially if you take back your journal, your notebook to your partner and say, okay, I figured out what's going on. Can I share with you? And you go through those 4 areas. Another one we use is DEAR. So we use the acronym DEAR, which is, D stands for the data. Again, I'm going to share the data with you. And I'm going to express to you, right, the emotions that brings up for me. I'm going to assert what I need in this moment. And then I'm going to reinforce it with a positive. So it might be something like this. When you talk to me and your voice is at a louder volume than normal, right? It makes me feel kind of scared and shaky inside. So what I need you to do is I need you just to talk with me, maybe with a little lower voice, a little slower, right? And I would really appreciate if you do that, because then I'm going to be able to stay in the conversation with you. And that would make you really safe. So it's a very, very simple way. And DEAR is kind of an easy thing to remember, an easy acronym. Also share with your partner when you feel like you're in the drama triangle and what role you're standing on. You know, what position am I on right now? You know, I realize I'm a victim. And recognize also that we can, on our own, be in a drama triangle in our heads. We don't even have to, you know, be in relationship with somebody else when this is happening. I am really good at going to the victim role, and then I'm persecuting, and then I'm wanting to be rescued, and I'm going all over the place. And what happens is it sets me up to be unsafe for the person I'm in relationship with, because when I go to approach them the next time, if I'm still in my drama triangle about them in my head, then I am more likely to create disconnection in the relationship when we interact. So be aware of that. The other thing too to remember is oftentimes when we're in a drama triangle, we like to invite other people into the drama triangle with us. So here's what I see show up sometimes, and that is I have an addict partner, a betrayed partner in a drama triangle, and they want to bring the therapist into the drama triangle. So how that shows up is you might have one of the partners say, well, my therapist agrees with me that you're not doing your recovery the way you should. Now, all of a sudden, the therapist is going to be that persecutor, and we're making the other person the victim. So we've got to be aware of that. We can bring family members in. We can bring group members in. We can bring in friends. We have to be so clear and so careful. And so it's very important to recognize what are the roles that I go into and how do I get out of them. So if you don't know how to do that, then number 6, you've got to seek professional support. You've got to understand your cycle, your negative cycle. Have your therapist help you map it out and figure it out. So that would be, what role do I go into? What are my stories? What are my behaviors? What are the boundaries I'm going to put into place? What are the actions I'm going to take? So you're going to want somebody who recognizes and understands all the dynamics and all of the aspects of recovery from the betrayal trauma due to addiction and pornography, addiction, sex and pornography addiction, as well as betrayal trauma. And you want to develop those strategies. The last thing is you've got to start to focus on widening your window of tolerance. We've got to start to prioritizing your self-care. I've got to step off of being the caretaker for other people and learn to take care of myself, because in the long run, it makes me safer for other people. So I work with the betrayed partners in those early days when they're in crisis and tell them, you've got to start checking in continually and going, what's going on internally for me? What am I feeling? What are my triggers? I love the halts, checking in, stopping. I go halts and ask yourself, am I hungry, angry, or anxious, lonely, tired, or stressed? And I give my clients a handout that's got ideas on what I can do for self-care there. You've got to get out of your stories. So that means you've got to recognize when you're in your stories. And I teach my clients how to do the thought stopping, whether you're going to tell yourself out loud to stop your stories, or you're going to journal and do a thought dump and get them all out of your head, or you work on gaining some of those skills and tools where we challenge the negative beliefs, the negative stories, and we reframe them. We can use self-compassion. Those are some of the ways that we can actually get us out of our stories and then out of the drama triangle. You've got to learn to engage in activities you enjoy. So instead of just focusing on the other person and their recovery and how they're doing, it's okay for you to focus on cultivating your own support network, your own friends, doing the things that bring you pleasure and joy so that you're more grounded. Self-compassion is a big part of that. So I've got to learn to talk kindly to myself. And I've got to remind myself that I have control, I have power, I have the ability to handle anything. If I'm on that position of being a victim, I have to remind myself that sometimes the most compassionate thing to do is let somebody else figure out how they're going to fix their own problems if I am a rescuer, right? And if I make a mistake and sometimes I become that persecutor, I need to be kind to myself and remind myself that I'm human and sometimes I make mistakes and I get to learn from that mistake and do it better next time or differently or in a healthier way. It's really important to take care of yourself because you've got to develop resilience. Recovery is difficult. There's a lot of ups and downs. In fact, oftentimes clients come into me and they hope the recovery is I'm getting from here to here and it's one nice straight smooth line. The reality is we are going to get from here to here, but recovery looks like this, up and down and up and down and up and down, but we are making forward progress. So it's important that you have a wider window of tolerance. So in conclusion, I want to just kind of circle back around and remind you that breaking free of the drama triangle, it does require time. It requires patience, it requires perseverance, it requires tools. So if you feel like you and your partner are constantly going into drama, take it into your therapist or get into couples therapy. Find somebody who's really qualified to help you understand how easily you get into it and what's going on, because we're looking for patterns. And when we identify the patterns, then we can figure out how to change and shift into healthier dynamics and in healthier coping strategies. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. I feel like drama shows up all the time, and it's so nice to know when it does because it helps us to know how to navigate, these really difficult situations.
The timing is interesting because I actually love the drama triangle, the Karpman drama triangle. I find it super helpful. I have shared, when I'm talking to people, I've done enough work with it that I can see it. Like I can see it happening. Thomas Tullis was a facilitator for the CSATs. And as a part of his module, one of my favorite parts of the training, and it's comprehensive. So when I recommend a CSAT trained therapist, they do 120 hours of training and then 30 hours of supervision. I mean, this is not, a DVD in a box or, whatever, and then poof, they're certified. They are doing the work. But when he was modeling that, he picked professionals to do we would love your questions. And I see them in there, but I'm going to share the story. But he would do these with professionals to teach them. And, and it was the saying so it was just this thing, and I loved it. He'd be sitting there like, looking at his nails and these people would be going because they did a physical, with the chairs set up with the roles, and they'd go back and forth, just like you're saying, we can switch roles. I can be the persecutor, then I can be the victim and switch, and they'd go back and forth. And eventually someone would finally say, how long do we have to do this? And he would go, how long do you want to do it? You've been doing it. Like, think about couples. It can be decades that they've been on this pattern. So my point with this is understanding, this is a pattern. I call it the negative two-step. We're going back and forth. I
Mhm.
loved it too because he did it with chairs. So sometimes he'd make somebody stand on the chair because it's like you're really being a persecutor or you're really being the victim, and so
Mhm.
the power shift, and things. But
Yes.
it's the disconnect, just like you're talking about. It's the disconnect. But my point, I wrote down, you have to keep trying. None of the stuff. I had somebody I was sharing, some suggestions, because that's all I can do is share suggestions. And he was like, I tried that and it made it worse. He tried it one time, and he and his partner, he was trying to slow things down, and his partner got angry. And I said, you didn't actually make things worse. You just got a reaction that you are uncomfortable with. But if you, anyway, but my point is, you can't go, I'm going to try it once, and then if it doesn't work and we never go on this triangle again, then it didn't work. No, this is, keep trying. You talked about, I can still go back to these roles. Of course we can all go back to these roles, and so there's, this is something we get to practice for the long haul. So I've got some more to share, but we're going to go to questions. I would rather share the questions than more to share, but so please ask more. I'm going to, okay. When you, let's see, I gotta move this. When do you do, what do you do when you ask your partner if the story we're telling ourselves is true, and it is true, and they don't answer truthfully? We are assuming our partners are in recovery, radical truth telling, when using this form of communication. And how do we use these communication methods if our partners are in active addiction or not good recovery narcissistic tendencies? Is it futile to take responsibility for our part played in the conflict as the betrayed, I think, as betrayed partners, if our essays are in blame shifting gaslit mode?
Okay, there's lots of layers to that
Yes.
question. So I'm looking at it very quickly because I want to make sure. Typically I start at the top of the question and work down. Let me talk a little bit about stories, because it's really interesting. Our brains love narrative. Our brains are basically wired to think in stories. That's what that means. And so what the brain does is it takes truth, and lots of times it doesn't know the whole truth, so it fills in the gaps. And remember, I'm also filling in those gaps based on how I filter it through my past experiences, my beliefs, my attitudes, all these other factors. And so I eventually create this story based on the facts. So oftentimes I'll go to share, here's the story I'm telling myself, and there is a lot of truth to it, but I may be missing parts of it. I may be perceiving it differently than the other person. I love the Brene Brown analogy that she uses, and she talks about lenses, and we're all looking through telescopes, and everybody has different colored lenses in their telescopes, depending on maybe their sex and how they were raised, their education, how much money they make, their belief system. And so I am looking at life through all of these different colored lenses. So you and I can have the exact same experience, and we see it totally differently. So our truths are
Mhm.
actually different. But in between the two of us, there really is the truth. And so it's true. A partner has to be, an addict partner has to be in real full recovery before they have the ability to push through their shame. First, their denial, break through denial, and then understand their shame, start healing, working through, and pushing through their shame before they can really stand up and say the truth and take accountability and responsibility for it. If somebody is not in, intentional, active recovery, and by that I mean they can make mistakes, but they're willing to recognize when they do, they take accountability, they try to do it better, and you see them moving forward. However, if your addict partner isn't truly in recovery, it's really hard to try to get them to sit down and talk about truth, or even talk about, here's the story I'm telling myself, because they are so in their denial or so in their shame that it's impossible to really communicate. So you asked, how do you use these communication methods if our addicts are in active addiction or not in good recovery? Oftentimes you have to figure out your own boundaries to put into place. So for you, it's not going to be putting boundaries on your addict partner. It's going to be, if my partner chooses to do this, then I'm going to do this to create safety for myself. right? Or I am going to, at this point in my partner's recovery, I am not going to bring this to my partner and talk about this particular thing. They don't have the capacity, the ability. And so I'm going to take it into my therapist. I'm going to take it to my group. I'm going to seek my support there. And so it gets very hard. I recognize when you don't have a partner who's in recovery with you. Ideally, you would have a partner that is willing to take on and hear the radical truth and, be honest and open. But my attitude and my feeling is that when somebody is, and an addict is not really in recovery, they have a lot of narcissistic tendencies, a lot of narcissistic behaviors. So that means there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of, like you said, gaslighting. And so I think for you, it's get the support you need, either from a therapist, other people. If you've got friends you turn to, you want the friends who are healthy emotionally, those that have good boundaries themselves, those that have good logic and reasoning, and that are there to keep you off of that position of being a victim. Because for you, it's going to be very easy to go into that role of being a victim because your addict partner, he really is your persecutor, especially when they go into those behaviors of gaslighting. It's true, but you have a choice. I can stay and be a victim, and I can be powerless, and I can focus on how little control I have, or I can look at what are my options. What can I control? Okay, what choices do I have? How can I do this differently? What's going to work for me? And then that's the only thing you really can have control over is you. So I guess at this point, turn and focus on you, find the support people that you need. If you find that you're going into conflict with your sex addict partner, then learn to call the timeout. You can still do that. You can even, sometimes I'll tell my clients, make it more about yourself than them and just say, hey, I feel like I've stepped into the drama triangle, or I feel like I'm getting emotional. So I need to call a timeout or put a pause on this conversation before I go limbic or get too emotional. Let's come back and talk about this later. And then go get yourself grounded, go reach out for support, figure out how you're going to take the next step, and whether or not you can even resolve it with the addict partner at that point, or whether you need to turn to other people for support. It's very difficult on the blame shifting. I've got little techniques that, I'll teach my clients on gaslighting, and so there's certain tools that we can use. I know oftentimes one of the gaslighting tools is a sex addict partner will say, I never said that, or I never did that. And we can come back and say to them, that's not how I recall it happening. And in some cases where there's a lot of gaslighting, I recognize that the betrayed partners keep a journal and just keep track, because sometimes it can get very, very confusing when there's so much going on. So you might want to kind of journal your experiences and just more of, like, I'd use the talking boundary. I would use the data, the stories you're in, what your emotions are and what you need. And that's going to help you in your own growth and your recovery as well.
And I really think it's like you can step off the drama triangle even if he's not, so I loved what Debbie said about, recognize that you're in victim mode, and you are, but it's disempowering if all you do is, this is happening to me. So what can you do in the healthy boundaries? But yeah, if two people are on the drama triangle, if one of them steps off, then there's nobody to react with. At least it stops something. So and if you're taking good care of you, the healthy boundaries for you. But a lot of the tools that we talk about, this is a continuation of things. All of the webinar facilitators talk about things at various stages of, Dr. Eddie Caparucci did one. It's like, if you're 2 years in and you guys are still stuck, here's some things to do. So it's one of those things that I think we continue to gather more information, but I do think you can use it for, I have no control over anyone else. I can only control my actions and reactions. And I think that's really helpful. You talked about the telescopes. A friend of mine talked about the prism, that we're looking at a prism. And I was like, oh, that's so helpful for me to remember, just because I'm looking at the same thing, I'm looking through this side of it, and somebody else may be looking through this side of it. And we are looking at the same thing, but we have a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, and that's real. You talked about somebody going like going limbic and not having memory. I was talking to a partner, and they happened to have, I can't remember if it was a nanny cam or whatever it was, but they had a camera in the house, and her addict said, "You said this," and she had zero recollection of it. They played back the camera. She absolutely had, and so
Mhm.
this goes both ways. Of when you're not able to have things up here and be logical and present, is hard, to know what your mouth is going to say, and have a recollection of it. So it's, I love what you talk about, do some grounding, I we have another question, but I will share really quickly, and this was like, I don't know, it's probably 12 years ago or something, like the story I tell myself, it can be about stupid stuff too. So, it was like January, and my husband bought the small boxes of Kleenex, and they were the Christmas edition. And I was like, what is he doing? Like, I hate the small boxes of Kleenex. We've been married forever. This is the story. He doesn't know me at all drama. And it's after Christmas. What am I supposed to do with Christmas and Kleenex, a storm per year? And so I fortunately held my tongue, went for a walk, and I came back and I said, I'm really curious, can you tell me, why you do this? Your favorite color is red. He bought them because they're red. Now, I love those Kleenexes, and I learned something from that. I was like, I could have created the story I told myself was like, he doesn't know me at all. He doesn't care. I mean, over Kleenexes, I was like going to pick a fight over Kleenexes, and he did it because I love red. I love red. And
Mhm.
so completely shifted my view because I asked more
Mhm.
questions and didn't go radioactive. So
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said. I love that curiosity piece. That's one thing I really emphasize with my clients. And that is, when we get triggered, rather than, reacting, take a pause, take a breath, and go in with curiosity and just ask, well, I'm curious. Why would you say that? Or why did you do that? Because now you've got greater understanding. And oftentimes we find ourselves in the drama triangle because we just don't stop and get more data and more information and try to understand where the person's coming from. And I think we also need to be aware of um, when we are in the drama triangle on our own, because I think we go in it a lot more than we realize
mhm.
we all do, you know, in our own thoughts, and that sets us up for being in relationships where there's more disconnection occurring. So, especially in the early days of recovery, even if you're in a relationship with somebody who's not doing recovery very well, you've got to really be aware of where you're at and always remind yourself that you have the power, you have the ability, you don't have to take care of other people, you can focus on yourself and just remind yourself. So
I think that rescuer role that you were talking about too, of like, I'm rescuing these people, they're victims, and I can help them, and it's like from this really good place. And so it's kind of like the nice feeling one, because like, look, I'm helping everyone.
mhm,
At some people, don't want to be rescued, and at great cost to myself, often as well. So I do really believe that, and then we get resentful, like,
mhm,
I'm doing
mhm,
all of this. But I do think, and you mentioned like when, and I hear it on both sides, but when a partner is going, I'm going to bubble wrap my addict to make sure that, like, I'm setting
mhm,
everything up so that they will be successful.
mhm.
Or, from an addict, I'm going to, I'm trying to control everything, and I've done all of these things, and I don't really want to look at myself. I want to, how can I help her? How can I help her heal? How can I fix her? How can I make this different? And it's like, you have to do your work. We have to take responsibility, and then we can, move into relationships. So a lot of this stuff, like I said, is deeper relationship stuff.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yes.
the next question, my SA partner will make promises to me and then say he never said that and will not follow through. How are we supposed to build trust when he does this? I would never believe promises. Like, that's like, yeah, I
Mhm,
mean, I've been in recovery for a long time. I still would not promise my husband that I'll never, ever, ever act out again.
mhm,
Chances are
mhm,
pretty good I won't. I
mhm.
do what I need to do today, but I would never promise, like, yeah. So what are your thoughts, Debbie?
Well, let's focus on the building trust part
Yeah.
first of all. And that is, I tell my clients, the betrayed partner clients, that, really trust is built with consistent recovery over time. And time is the crucial thing. Consistency is the crucial thing. Recovery behavior is the crucial thing. Am I seeing all of that? So if they're not following through on things that they promised to do, they're not in recovery. I would probably go a little deeper at times when they say they're going to do something and ask them, I'm curious, what does that look like to you? And are you really going to do it? Because one of the issues that a sex addict partner has is they don't show up authentically at times. They'll tell you one thing when they really don't have an intention of doing that. So they've not learned that consistency piece, the reliability piece yet that they need to in recovery. So sometimes getting curious or asking more about it, what that looks like, will give you an indicator of really, are they truly, intending on doing that? I would probably even ask, I'd rather have you tell me that you're really not going to do this than promise to do it and not follow through. So which is it going to be? That would be very, very helpful. And then you as a partner, if they say, well, I'm not really going to do it, you've got to be able to stay grounded and hear the hard stuff. Because in that way, they're going to be more honest and open with you in the future. So I know that the betrayed partners I work with, they would rather have the truth than have a false promise. They just would. And it's very hard to feel safe and secure when you feel like they're promising to do something and then they fall through. Again, what I said before is when they say that they don't remember doing that, I'd probably keep a journal and keep track of it and just notice, is there a pattern? Maybe you just want to make some notes in your phone. Sometimes that's helpful. And maybe you even put a date on the note and maybe the exact phrase you heard them say. And maybe if you've had a conversation about it, some of the highlights to that. And then when you're both in a very grounded place or in a couple session, you take that in and say, hey, here's a pattern we're in. I feel like we come to a decision. He's made or she's made this promise to follow through on this or commit to this. And then it doesn't happen. They say they don't remember it. I remember it. I wrote it down. How can we get out of this negative cycle? So sometimes you just can't do it on your own. This is one of those difficult things that I think that sometimes the addict partner has to hear it from somebody else, not from the betrayed partner. Sometimes they're more open to hearing it from a professional.
I agree. And I was thinking, if it's about a specific thing, like, they were going to some actionable thing, it's like, why don't you set up a calendar notice and send me as an invitee and do it in front of me so that then we both have it. Then we're on the same page with that, but I do think there's a lot of times when navigating this, but it depends on what the promise is. I promise I'll never, whatever, and that's just like, that's to shut you up, with all due respect. Like, it's just to push the problem down the road. It's more like, I often say, for today, I'm sorry my behaviors have caused you hurt in the past. I'm doing my best to do what I need to do today so that I don't do that again. But there's no promises in that. It's like, I'm doing what I need to do today. That's really all we have. I did put in the chat, Dr. Rob wrote a book, Out of the Doghouse, and it's about that. It's about, not making promises, do what you say you're going to do. He shares a story about someone, they ultimately got divorced because he didn't take out the trash. And it was like, it makes it sound really dramatic, but she was like, if you say you're going to take out the trash and you don't do it, I can't trust you with that. What else can I not trust you with? And it was this really clear moment for the partner of like, he is not trustworthy because this is how he doesn't show up. So it's, we do what we say we're going to do or, if I'm like, I can't get I forgot to take out the trash. Okay. I forgot to do it. I'm going to put a calendar reminder in my phone to remind me to do it next week, whatever it is that we need to do. And I also wanted to mention the Betrayed Partner work group starts again June 14th. A really good course with Angela Spearman. It's from a Prodependent Lens. It's, the healthy boundaries that Debbie was talking about. They talk about how do you construct healthy boundaries for you, for your safety, not, punitive and to punish someone else. So check out, there's lots more on the website. So I gave the link to the various work groups. So
Yeah. Well, I'm going to
So,
circle back around. You made me think of something too, and it might be helpful for that betrayed partner that just asked that last question. Sometimes I'm all about looking for patterns. I'm always looking for things that
mhm,
repeat themselves because sometimes we have to see in order to recognize the reality of our situation. So one of the things I often work with my clients on is, okay, you've got to start really looking at what's occurring here. So part of your, documenting things might be you've got to start writing down the data. Here's the situation. Here's what I felt about it, and here's the story I'm telling myself about it, and just start looking and seeing, is this repeat over and over and over again? Because you might go back into that story as, I'll never trust him again, or I don't feel safe, or and if you see that time and time again, and this has happened for a long period of time, that might be your reality. And now you have to determine if you're going to make a different decision, if you're going to put different boundaries into place. So what you said made me think of that.
yeah, and well, and that's valid. It's, oh, he promised, and, but 4 years later, he's doing the exact same things. We talk about the drama triangle. This is the pattern. We just keep going back and forth, and and I often use the nothing changes if nothing changes, and I know the other version is nothing changes until something or someone changes.
Mhm.
And both of those are true. So someone going, hey, enough. I'm setting healthy boundaries for me. That takes care of you, but it also can start to shift things out there. But you don't set healthy boundaries to control him and make him get, and he's going to do what he's going to do. And unfortunately, and we run up against this. I had an addict that wrote me, and he was like, I just don't want to be sober. Like this is a guy I've been in communication with for a couple of years, and he's gone to lots of treatment centers, and I think he was honest. I just don't want to be sober. I know this is going to kill me. And he was like, okay with that. And nothing I can do. I feel for him. I will think of him daily because I
Mhm.
really care, but
Yeah,
I can't save him. So
you can't rescue
no,
him.
no. So
It's true.
anyway, Debbie, thank you so much.
You're
Thanks everybody for
welcome.
the questions and for being here. This recording will be posted on our website, so you can check this out, and lots of other, Debbie's got great content, other great content by other people too, but I find hers to be so practical, with, here are 10 things for accountability, like all of those type of things that are really useful, as you're making this journey that we call recovery. So
Mhm.
thanks everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.